To the best of my knowledge, everybody should be present tonight.
Okay. Well, hopefully she'll be on shortly. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the February 16th Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting. This meeting is being held entirely remotely with participants participating via Zoom. I ask that all participants please keep your phone or your device muted when you're not speaking so that you're not distracting to our minutes taker or to anybody else on the call. I also ask that before you speak, you raise your hand in your camera window or virtually and wait to be recognized. Once you are recognized, please make sure you state your full name and any relationship you have to a project, including your address if you happen to be in a abutter. And with that, we will open up the meeting under public meeting, public comment on items not being heard this evening. And I do not see anybody commenting on YouTube at this point. I also do not see any public comment on the call. So with that, the following items tonight are continued. Under public hearing notice of intent, we have Nantucket Boathouse LLC at 2 and 6 Easton Street, continued until March 9th. We have 78 Wauwinet Road LLC at 78 Wauwinet Road, continued until March 9th. And that is it for our continuances. So we will begin tonight with Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 55 Warren's Landing, represented by Rachel Freeman.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Rachel Freeman. I'm representing the Nantucket Land Bank tonight with a notice of intent application for 55 Warren's Landing Road. This is a approximately 17 acre site located on the west end of the island. And this was transferred to the land bank from the town in 2019. And during our exploration of this property, we discovered that there was an asbestos cement pipe, which has a hole in it, basically right in the center of the beach. First, we investigated whether or not the pipe actually was functioning and had a purpose in the resource area in order to determine whether or not it was worth replacing. It does actually move a lot of water in and out of that salt marsh that's behind there. That salt marsh system is also connected to the greater salt marsh system across Warren's Landing Road, which is owned by the Conservation Foundation. And there's actually a connection between there as well. So we were quite surprised to find out that there's a significant amount of water moving in and out of this pipe. The resource areas that are present in this project area are salt marsh, coastal dune, coastal beach, and land under the ocean. The entire project is also within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We examined a lot of different ways to repair this pipe or replace it, and what we ended up coming up with being the safest and best option for the time being is removing the asbestos cement pipe and head wall, which is basically made of wood and is kind of degrading at this point, and which is just a small head wall around the existing pipe on the edge of the salt marsh, and disposing of the asbestos cement pipe correctly, of course, and replacing it with approximately 120 linear feet of reinforced concrete pipe with a flared section on the outlet, and the wooden head wall would be removed and replaced with a precast cement head wall as well. These specs were designed by Leo Azadorian, and this was after, as I said, some research into different options in this area. One of the other options that we explored was simply removing the pipe altogether. And I just don't know at this time that we're ready to do that, because it would basically facilitate an opening, a relatively large opening in the beach, and there's parking issues right now. There's the potential for that parking area to flood. And so this is something that we will be looking at going forward. But for now, we feel like our best alternative is to actually remove and replace the pipe. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope that explained what we want to do and why. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any concerns with the project. I see it being able to be permitted within the regulations. That being said, I would strongly urge the land bank to take a proactive stance in dealing with this property, and view this pipe restoration as a temporary measure. I think there's huge benefit to the coastal resources and resiliency of our island to ultimately revert that system back into a natural salt marsh. I go to this property probably at least 10 times a year, and I know it well. And I think that eventually we're going to have the type of flooding where the pipe's not going to be able to really do anything anyways. So just bring it to the staff and the Land Bank Commission to think about the long-term resiliency of this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no, so I'll open it up for public comment. Does not appear that we have any public comment on YouTube at this point. Will, do we have everything we would need to close?
Indeed, we do, Ashley.
Rachel, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Joe, seconded by Mike. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Local Bowie Properties LLC at 15 Loretta Lane. And it looks like we have Dan Malloy on for this one.
Good afternoon, Dan Malloy for the applicant. I'll just get right into it. So if everybody recalls the last meeting where we came in to replace the existing house. So we heard everyone's feedback from the last meeting. You know, if it helps, if you can zoom in on that side at all. There we go. So in the previous application, the plan that you saw, we had the building pretty much tied up to the 25-foot buffer zone in red. So the proposal is the same, but we've tried to make it better in terms of what we've done. If you can see it, we've pulled the house back even further. What we're trying to do is split the difference between the two buffer zones in red. Those are the 25s. So we're able to pull it back enough that we're matching the square footage. So the square footage of the existing dwelling that's in the 25 and the 50, we're matching. So there's no increase. The original plan you saw had an increase in the square footage inside the 50. So we've reconfigured the house, pulled things back further. So there's basically a match of the 50-foot buffer zone, which I know something the board was looking for, as well as us pulling it further back. The rest of the plan is essentially the same. The other things that will change on this site, if you can see it, there's a storm retaining wall. Almost majority of that, if not all of it, will be coming out as part of this project, obviously because it's in the house footprint. And there'll be some very minor modifications to the parking area, which is just below the stone wall. Since the house pulled forward, we have to just tweak the driveway a little bit. But there's no further incursions. We're not No encourages, no new work in the 25. The only work in the 25 is the removal of the portion of the old house and the patio system up there. No new land alteration, no clearing required other than what's already altered today. So basically, we've pulled it back, I think, as much as we can without encroaching on something else. That's really the big change. That's it.
All right, once the screen share stops, I think we can go to questions and comments. Ian, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, Dan, I appreciate what you've done, but we discussed removing the stone revetment and at the last meeting. And so currently you're proposing a house that is going to be built in 2023 with a rock revetment that will be there probably long after I'm 6 feet under. And I feel that it should be removed and that there should be a more environmentally friendly protection for where the stone revetment is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Seth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On a separate point, Mr. Malloy, I appreciate the revised plan. And though I think it's an improvement over the past plan, I would like to see there be no increase in total structural area. So the current footprint of the existing dwelling, I think, is 955 square feet. Just check on that. And I would like to see the new dwelling maintain that same structural footprint. And 955 square feet. So although I think it's good to get the building structure farther away from 25-foot buffer zone, I would like to see it within the 955 feet footprint. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. I have to agree with you with the no increase in structural footprint since we're still within no build areas here. Ian, I know I don't love the rock revetment there, but I think that we could certainly have a condition and normally do with home upgrades like this that would not allow any upgrade maintenance of that structure to kind of sunset it for something more environmentally friendly in the future. I don't know that we can require them to remove it, but we can see how this plays out. So that is, a concern to me, but again, I don't know that we can have them remove it if they meet other structural requirements. The other piece I'm worried that we're missing is construction protocol for this site. It is incredibly constrained. And I am concerned with how, the tear down of the original house and the construction of the new house will take place all within buffer zones, essentially, where our vehicle is going to be parking, so that they're all, outside of our resource areas. And then Ian, I saw your hand back up.
You did, Madam Chair. Sorry if I looked as I was going to interrupt you. So we can certainly refuse permission. We can deny the application. And so I'm putting it to all my fellow commissioners that if we set this precedent, then people who come in the future and have a pre-78 house that is protected one way or the other, and then we say, fine, build a brand new house there and keep the protection that you're no longer entitled to, then I think they can come back and use this as part of their legal argument as to why they should be granted an exemption. So I don't see this as being a hardship per se, and I do think it's a very important precedent. So I mean that I'm taking into account what you're saying, and that's why I would say that we should deny it if they don't remove the rock revetment, because future generations will thank us for. I refuse to use that hackneyed expression, drawing the line in the sand on this issue, but I think it's a really important one. And thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Ian. Mark, I had seen your hand up, and then Mike, I'll go to you.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. Mr. Malloy, I'm struggling with this because there's so much construction going on in the 25 to 50 foot zone, and even some in the 0 to 25 to remove the existing structure. I think this person has to live with what they have. I don't see where the benefit is, particularly where you're increasing the footprint. And even if you keep the same footprint, I'm troubled by the amount of disturbance there'll be within the 25 to 50 foot zone, and also the removal in the 0 to 25. So I'm not inclined to grant anything here except maybe working on the existing structure if that's a desire of yours. But to totally take it down and make a new structure and be within under our jurisdiction in the no-build zone, I just can't see in good faith approving anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of good points from Commissioners. Ian, I respect what you're saying about the rock revetment, but I agree with Ashley that we may have to live with it there, and we'd like to see some construction documents on how the work would proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Seth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In reference to Ian's points, so although I'm totally in agreement with you that it would be beneficial for our island's future and for our wetland resource areas that we protect to have them remove the rock revetment, unfortunately, I take the opinion that the rock revetment is not actually part of the application that's submitted. They've only submitted an application for the house and landscaping. So we can certainly deny that application on the merits that it can't be conditioned to meet the performance standards of the WPA, our local regulations, or both, but we can't deny it simply because they don't want to remove a revetment. There has to be a performance standard reason that we're tying it to. So let's just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Seth. Dan Malloy, had I seen your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to respond briefly to some of the comments if I could. So in terms of the revetment, I just want to make sure the commission's aware that the revetment that's there was approved, does have a valid order of conditions. It does have a valid certificate of compliance on it. So it was put in legitimately. There are also, I believe, some ongoing conditions on it that have to be completed. So in this, the new owner just bought it, so it's not something I'm throwing on them, but there was requirements under the order, under the cert of compliance, that they do maintain the revetment, that they put some sand out there. So this spring they are due to continue that maintenance. So I just want to let the commission know that there are valid permits out there for it. And then in terms of the structure, just so we're clear, we're not increasing the amount of building square footage between the 0 to 25 and 25 to 50 is not increasing. So it's staying the same. The only building square footage increase is in the 50 to 100, which is something the commission would normally look to approve. So anything inside the 50, we're matching the square footage. There is no increase. And from a benefit standpoint, I mean, we are trying to get further from the wetland, from the bank, as well as the wetland behind us. And we can only go, having 2 buffer zones, we can only go so far. And in terms of interference or concerns over the construction protocols, which we will get you the construction protocols. You had asked that last time, I forgot to send it in. So we will get that to you. But in terms of the ground alteration, this building right now is on piers. So it's not going to take a great effort in terms of altering this property to take it out, as well as there just isn't, we're not ripping out a big full concrete basement here. So, and we'll put that in the construction protocol, but it's not as intensive of a project from a land alteration as it might look. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners before I open it up to the public? Seth?
Yeah, just quickly to Mr. Malloy, I hear you about the fact that the increase in areas within the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone, which if this was a new project, generally would be approved, but this is not a new project. This is an application for a raise and rebuild of a structure in a area that's currently not allowable to be built. So, you know, if the applicant came in and said we want to do modifications to the structure on its current footprint, renovations, you know, that is probably pre-existing use. But because this is a raise and rebuild, the structure no longer has any of those allowable uses to it. And that's why I'm asking that we have no structural increase in the buffer zones whatsoever. That's just, I understand what you're saying, but that's what the reason I'm asking for it.
Thank you, Seth. So at this point, I will open up 15 Loretta Lane for public comment. RJ Turcott.
Thank you, Chair Erisman. RJ Turcott for the Nantucket Land Council. I actually raised this question at the last meeting and I didn't see anything in the packet. If I missed it, forgive me, but I had raised the concern that someone should look into, whether it's a commissioner or staff, the original notice of intent to see about the structure of the revetment, because it extends onto another property and that's not typically done. That's not usually how these structures are put in. So just curious if anyone's had a chance to look into that, because especially after the situation last week with Meter Street, this may be an opportunity if something's out of compliance to also condition that. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ, for bringing that up. That kind of ties to Mr. Malloy saying there was a sand nourishment requirement here that I must admit in all my walks past there, I've never noticed any sand nourishment. So that would be a good one for Will maybe to track down.
If I could add, we had intended to go through the orders, the old certs of compliance, and we will be reviewing all that with staff to make sure that whatever has to be done or corrected is done.
Thank you. Let me just check YouTube for more public comment. I do not see any public comment on YouTube. So Dan, it seems like there are still some questions that need to be answered, including construction protocol. Is this something you would like to continue until our next meeting?
I would like to continue. I just want to be clear. I understand what the commission is looking for. I understand the construction protocol. That's very clear. But in terms of, I guess what I'm hearing, what we expect, we're going to come back with the same plan with additional detail in the construction protocol and see where everyone stands at that point. So I'm hearing a little bit of a mixed review in terms of rebuilding the house or just fixing it in place, which I'll admit I didn't expect that direction. I would have expected the proposed plan to be seen more positively, but we'll prepare the construction protocol, continue the next meeting, and I guess continue the discussion.
Thank you, Dan. You know, I think we're happy to see the structure moving further away from the resource areas, but the site is so constrained that any increase in structural area, I think, is concerning, even if it's in the 50 to 100, just because there's still so much building in the no build zone. So if there was another option to sharpen the pencil and reduce the structural area in general, I think that would be seen more favorably.
If I'm going to ask one quick generalized question, and I don't know if this is physically an option on our end, but I'm happy to take a look. if we were physically able to keep the footprint and go up and clean up a second floor, would that be a viable alternative? Essentially, all we'd have to do is clean up the foundation and go up. There'd be very little alteration. There'd be no removal taking place. And I don't know if we can physically do that on our part, but I'll just throw it out there as a potential.
Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't want to mislead you, Dan. I know I have two fellow commissioners who are opposed to, I'm getting off target here. So strictly referring to raising it up another floor, I would have to go out there again and really think that over as to how obtrusive it was. So I would remain neutral on the subject until going out there again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I think I would have trouble with that, just given wetland scenic views and its position between the resource areas. I think having a larger structure would be problematic, but I would have to see both options, I guess. Mike, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be open to a second floor just based on what's already out there, but again, would like to see the documents. When I say what's out there, I'm referring to the houses around it, just so Dan has some direction.
Thank you, Mike. Any other commissioner feedback? Joe?
I liked what was done. Thank you.
Do you mean what they proposed tonight?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Does that help you out a little bit?
It does. I know we'll come back with the next meeting. We're not in a massive rush with this. We'll come back with the next meeting with the construction protocol and continue it and see where we go.
Okay.
All right.
Our next meeting is March 9th, so we'll see you on March 9th.
Good. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. So that moves us on in notices of intent to Morgan at 24A New Lane, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant, Joanne Morgan. This is a application for the proposed removal of an existing dwelling and construction of a new modular dwelling or placement of a new modular dwelling on a new foundation system with associated grading, landscaping, and utility installation within the buffer zone to a vegetated wetland that is actually located across the street from the property on a parcel of land owned by the Nantucket Islands Land Bank. Property is located at the intersection of New Lane and Mayhew Lane. The vegetated wetland occurs across the street to the east. The site itself contains two single-family dwellings. This is actually a condominium with two separate units. We are essentially asking for permission to modify Unit 1. The intent would be to move the existing dwelling off the property. It's a one-story structure sitting on a crawl space foundation. And the intent is to remove or demolish that structure and place a new modular structure on the existing site. Site is serviced by both municipal water and municipal sewer. The work does occur outside of the 25-foot no disturb and the 50-foot no build, but it is within 100 feet. And so we are before you tonight with the notice of intent. The surrounding land use in this area is essentially residential. There is a newly developed property to the north and older developed homes to the south and to the west property. Property is not located within a mapped NHESP jurisdiction. It's outside of, and it's also outside of the flood zone. Initially, we thought about potentially filing this as a request for determination of applicability. However, we did some soil testing out here, and based on the location of a groundwater and a perched water table, we believe both the existing foundation and then the potential new foundation would occur within the 2-foot separation to groundwater. So we felt filing a full notice of intent and asking for that waiver was appropriate. So with regards to the application itself, it's a notice of intent with a waiver request for the 2-foot separation to groundwater. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So we'll open this one up for public comment. So public comment on 24A New Lane. It does not look like we have any public comment on YouTube. Will, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, we do.
Paul, would you like to close?
I would, thank you.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Joe, seconded by Mike. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So that moves us on. We don't have any amended orders. No RDAs. So that moves us to minor modifications. We have Gifford and Carlin at 28 Sheep Pond Road, also represented by Paul Santos.
Okay, thank you again. Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. On behalf of Ben Gifford and Jane Carlin, this is a minor modification request for a project that we were just before the board, I believe, within the last 1 or 2 meetings. And the reason I'm before you tonight is this was a case where we were abandoning an existing septic system, placing a new tight tank on the property, and that's essentially what the work is. The bank had eroded and it exposed the original leach pit for the property. So we were going to, we filed a notice of intent to remove the rest of the existing septic system, which is a septic tank and a distribution box, and then construct or place a new tight tank on the property. So within this minor mod, I've actually submitted the plans approved by the Board of Health for the tight tank. But in the process of doing that, the bank had eroded through another storm, and we discovered another tank, which you'll see a photo of, on the property that we were unaware of. And in fact, we believe it actually serviced a parcel or a property that may have been located previously across Sheep Pond Road. There's no record of it at the Board of Health. It doesn't have anything to do with our septic system. So I'm a little bit confused on what it was or how it got there, but it is there and it's now on our property. So we're tasked with getting it removed. So this minor mod is to essentially go in and include the removal of that tank as part of our application, and also to incorporate the approved Board of Health plans for the tight tank on the property. And that's the extent of the minor mod.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Mark Beal?
Thank you, Ashley. Paul, I have to assume you determined that this septic tank is inactive.
Oh, correct. I think from the size and the location of the tank, the pipe that you see towards the beach is actually the inlet. So there were properties across the street, and I think this got put in with no regard for property lines, from what I can assume. But yes, it's inactive.
Oh, and an old Nantucket relic.
Yes, so.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Will, do we have everything we would need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, we do.
Paul, I'm assuming you'd like us to issue tonight?
Yes, please. And I'm assuming if I find a leach pit closer to me, I won't come back. We'll just get it out of there as part of taking this one out too. Because the tank goes to something, I don't know what, so.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. Yeah,
So. And hopefully that'll relieve us of everything that's going to be exposed on this particular property. The well is on the other side of the lot, so we're in good shape there.
well, we'll wish you no new mysteries on this site. Mark, I saw your hand up.
I move for, close to approve it, I guess. Move for approval.
Move to issue that minor mod. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
It may have fallen off the Warren Sawyer, Paul.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us to Jen Sankety Lighthouse Trust at 37 Sankety Head Road. Ryan Maxwell, are you on for this one?
I am. All right, thank you, Ryan Maxwell with Bracken Engineering, for the record. This minor mod is very straightforward. We're just looking to relocate the previously approved structures, which are shown in red on the site plan. We're still maintaining that 90-foot setback to the coastal bank. And the majority of this development remains outside of the 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank. So that's pretty much it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Will, do we have everything we need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, we do.
Ryan, would you like us to issue tonight?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to issue? Motion made by Seth, seconded by Ian. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. That moves us on to certificates of compliance. We have Willard Street Nominee Trust LLC at 16 Willard Street.
Sharing my screen here. So 16 Willard Street dates back to an order from 2002. Visited the site today. Everything is as it appears on the as-built plan, and there are no relevant ongoing conditions.
Thank you, Will. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue the cert with no ongoing conditions? Mark, are you making that motion? Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us to Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 48 and 50 Tennessee Avenue. We have 3 different certs. Will, would you recommend we take them together or separately?
I think we could take them together. That's totally fine.
Okay. So we have SC 48 21 94, SC 48 30 43, and SC 48 22 67. And I know we have Rachel Freeman on if there's anything to explain or if we have any questions. Ian?
I have a question, which I guess I'm just airing some discontent here, Rachel. because your application for the wood pier was on 6-inch piles, and they're 12-inch piles that were actually put in there. Would you have a comment about that? I mean, I know we're all getting heavier, you know, the country is getting heavier, but even so.
Sure. Thank you, Ian and Ashley. There's a couple things that played into this. One is that there was a big learning curve in that when you spec piles, they are not uniform sizes. So what is one size at one end is not the same size at the other end, because these are trees. So the base is larger and the top is smaller. Or if you're putting a piling for a dock, basically what you do is you flip it over and you put the skinny end down and you drive it in, and then you end up with the wider end up top. Therefore, I think probably what happened was that they were inaccurately described in the application as being 6-inch piles. And we need to be clearer in the future that there's a variable width and explain more thoroughly and get more information on what the actual size will appear above ground. So that was a piece of the puzzle, and that was something that I learned throughout that process. So that is how they became bigger than they were.
Well, thank you for the explanation, Rachel. And it certainly looks as though it's going to last for quite a while. And it is an addition to the landscape. Thank you.
Either Will or Rachel, can one of you go through what each of these certificates was for, just for members of the public and others who might be watching?
Sure. Will, do you want me to do it or would you like to do it? It's totally up to you.
If you'd like to, Rachel, go ahead, but
Sure. Let me
not, I can.
start with SE 848-2194. This was the original order of conditions from 2009. Some of what we're doing is we're closing out old order of conditions that we have at the land bank, and we're doing our homework on this and taking advantage of having the staff who is capable of doing that. Thank you, Elizabeth Phelps. So this order of conditions permitted the original removal of the original residential dwelling, shed, boathouse, and abandonment of the sewage system, maintenance of an existing boardwalk, and restoration of disturbed areas. The work was completed for this. There was an issue with the boathouse, which resulted in the boathouse not being moved for some number of years. The HTC did not want to see that move anywhere outside of Nantucket. So that was initially left on site for a while. And then there was a subsequent order of conditions requested in, which was the SE 48-3043, which permitted the removal and relocation of existing structures and the restoration, including grading and landscaping. And that was actually for the move of the boathouse, because that was actually when we ended up being able to move the boathouse, was in December 2017. Because we finally found a space right down the road for it that worked well. So that was what that certificate of compliance was for. In that removal and relocation, we ended up restoring the area and just putting down the conservation mix. The last order of conditions is SE 48-2267. And this one's, I'm confused. Sorry, I'm out of order. This was, oh, you know what? I am totally out of order. Okay, this is the one that was intervening. So this was when we decided, because we couldn't remove the boathouse, we were going to renovate the existing boathouse, place benches and do the visiting pruning. The boathouse never got renovated. We did end up moving it in 2017. And that is what is described here. And the benches were installed, and we maintain the shrubs at a certain height in accordance with our vista pruning OOC. So that's what that is for. So there was a series of boathouse issues, which resulted in the initial boathouse removal, the denial by the HTC, us asking to renovate the boathouse, deciding that it wasn't the smartest choice, subsequently finding a location for it down the road in Nantucket, and requesting the removal of the boathouse. I hope that was clear.
Thank you. Definitely helpful.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In relation to the getting back to the pile question, I don't know if staff has like researched this at all and seen if the plan versus the reality is technically in compliance. Because although, in my opinion, it's not a huge concern, I wouldn't want us to issue a certificate of compliance for a structure that's out of compliance with its permit, and I'd request that the land bank just file a minor mod before we issue the cert. Especially being the land bank, they can file for free, so it's not a lot of time or effort for them. So I'd request that they do that if needed. And then also, I want to make sure that although we are discussing each of these together, I want to make sure we go through them individually, because I predict that there will be ongoing conditions different for each one. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Ian?
Well, I'll let Rachel reply first.
Okay, Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to mention that one thing is we're completely happy to file a minor modification. That's actually a good idea. I don't think that would be a big issue. We are not asking for a certificate of compliance for the building of the dock. We are still waiting on the as-built, and therefore that is not one of these three that were actually on the table for tonight.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Ian, sorry about that.
Oh, not at all. But so I asked Jeff to distribute, and I'm not sure whether or not he did, pictures that I took of a stovepipe converter from 4 inches to 6 inches to show how much larger the piles were. And so I would have thought a minor mod application would be a very sensible avenue to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So if there's no other questions or comments, I guess we'll go through these one by one to vote on issuing the certificates. So again, we have Nantucket Islands Land Bank, 48 and 50 Tennessee Avenue. First on our list is SE 482194. Will, are there any ongoing conditions that you can predict with this one, or do any commissioners have conditions they feel should move forward?
I'm not sure if Rachel has anything to add, but when I had read all of these, I'm not sure that there's any ongoing conditions that would be super relevant to any of this. It's removal of structures. Unless there's any invasive species management, but there's none already existing in the conditions.
Okay. Thank you, Will. Seth, I see your hand going up.
Yeah, thank you. And to be honest, I haven't read the original orders, but I do see here things related to restoration of disturbed areas, grading and landscaping, vista pruning, and I think if any of those were referenced in the conditions, then we should maintain them, especially things like invasive species management and vista pruning. We'd certainly want to have ongoing oversight over that.
So Will, are there any conditions in the order that identify those? Because I agree, if it's removal of the structure and they've already revegetated everything, we wouldn't need anything ongoing for that.
I'm double checking my paper copies of the original. With you.
Madam Chairman, may I say something?
Yep, go ahead, Rachel.
The one condition that we would like to continue is the vista printing, if that's possible. Everything else is not ongoing work on the site. That is something that we would like to continue.
Okay, so Will, we just need to find the condition for, again, we're on 2194. Any conditions for vista pruning on there?
I'm making sure, but I'm pretty sure that the vista pruning is only on 2267.
Okay. So then would somebody like to make a motion to issue the cert for SE 482194 with no ongoing conditions? Mike, are you making that motion? Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Zarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Next on our list is SE 483043.
And this one does not have any additional conditions. It's 18 and 19 for structural removal, etc. The next one will though.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion then to issue the cert with no ongoing conditions? Motion made by Mike, seconded by Ian. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Zarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And now to the final one with some ongoing conditions. We have SE 482267.
All right, so for this one, we're gonna have additional ongoing condition 19, which is that vista pruning shall be limited to pruning of vegetation no lower than 5 foot above existing grade. And there's also a condition 20 that I'm not sure if we want to continue. I think Rachel, you can answer this question, but the order allows for the cutting of cedar trees with staff approval during boat removal activities. Was the other one.
Was that to remove like defunct boats?
Yes, and I don't know that we've really had that issue as an ongoing issue. If you would like to leave it in, that's fine. We occasionally have to pluck large numbers of boats out of salt marshes and things like that.
Mhm.
But the cedar trees are really restricted to in front of the boathouse at this point. I'm sure that was a one-off.
Yep.
I don't feel the need to carry that one forward.
I think
really
it's just
for me.
19.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that opinion. So then we need somebody to make a motion to issue the cert for SE 482267 with ongoing condition number 19, allowing for vista pruning. I can't remember the footage, but as written in the order. Mike, are you making that motion? Motion made by Mike. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you, Rachel. And that moves us on to our orders of conditions. Will sent these out earlier today. We have Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 55 Warren's Landing.
All right, so for 55 Warren's Landing. Sorry, my computer screens aren't listening to me today. So we had our conditions 18, 19, and then I added a condition: sedimentation shall be minimized with best measures in place to contain any sediment.
we need something in there just because that pipe had like asbestos,
Asbestos.
that it needs to be removed and disposed of. I think, is that through hazardous waste at the dump?
We could say. I do think we should use a condition like that. Let me just think of the wording.
Industry standard best management practices.
Love it.
Love that blanket.
If I may, while he's writing that, I have two other points.
Yes, go ahead, Seth.
The first is related to 20. I like that condition. I've seen it before, but can we also include erosion? So it would say erosion and sedimentation shall be minimized with best measures in place to minimize erosion and contain any sediment. Or yeah, actually that's fine. Just to contain any sediment.
I'll throw that in.
All right. And then a question. Is this considered a water dependent use, or is this not considered a structure?
So I had interpreted it that it was a water dependent use.
So we should
had there,
say in the order that this is a water dependent use.
yeah.
That's a good catch, Seth, in the findings.
All right. You have anything else?
Yeah, any other amendments, questions, comments from commissioners? If not, oh,
That's all right. I was just gonna say, I wish I could type as fast as Will does. Sorry.
And it's with like 2 fingers. I don't even do it the real way.
oh, you're making my teacher soul very upset. Watching those one-finger typers is terrifying. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue as amended?
Sure.
Right, motion made by Ian, seconded by Mike. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
All right. So our next and final for the evening is 24A New Lane. We have 18 and 19 are general conditions. If there's anything else that anybody would like to add.
Any questions, comments, amendments from commissioners? And if not,
Should we put something in for if they come back with a landscape plan? Just because it goes 50 to 100?
I mean, I'm fine with that condition. And then Seth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think with all new development, we should put lighting condition in, even if the resource area is across the road, we should still do it.
Thank you. That's a really good point.
Yep.
I apologize. I missed what Seth said. Seth, could you repeat it?
Yes, sure, Mike. The lighting conditions.
Thank you.
Do we want to say prior to the start of work or anything like that? Mike?
Yes, probably for approval prior to the start of work, I would say, yeah.
Should that say commission staff?
That depends. Mike, do you want it to come back in front of the commission or just in front
Now
of?
staff is fine for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then if you bear with me for a moment. I just want to grab those lighting conditions, keep them consistent. All right. All exterior lighting shall be directed away from the resource area and in compliance with chapter 102 of the code of the town of Nantucket.
Thank you, Will. If there aren't any other amendments or questions and comments, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as amended?
Also move.
All right, motion made by Mark. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. By roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Zarelli,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And then,
Nope, that's me.
all right, thank you, Will. So that moves us on. We don't have any extension of orders. That brings us to approval of minutes from February 2nd. I have to admit, they weren't in the packet and it didn't click with me to check online, so I missed them.
The
So
The
I
minutes
missed them
are-
too, and so either we can postpone or I can't vote. Can't approve.
postpone.
Postpone, yeah.
All right, so we will continue these minutes until next meeting.
Can I say something really quickly?
Yes, Jeff.
All right, I just snuck in here. So obviously Terry has retired, so we are doing minutes at a staff level here. And I don't think we really fully appreciated how much work Terry put into these. So we are looking into some ways to try to do them a little bit more efficiently because we don't really want to invest. I mean, honestly, for a meeting like this will be a little bit less, but like the last meeting, will probably take Will or Lisa or I, some combination thereof, about 3 to 4 hours to get through the whole set of minutes. So we're trying to find some ways to make it a little bit more efficient. So we might try a couple different formats for you guys to take a look at. And they may just take, instead of being like meeting to meeting, it may just take a little bit longer given time. And we try to prioritize things like field visits and inspections, things like that over getting the minutes done right off the jump. So until the town replaces Terry, we're trying to get through. And we're trying our best to not have to give that awesome decision of one of you guys needs to designate a secretary to take minutes for the commission, because that would be awful. So just bear with us.
Oh,
Jeff, I heard like rumor on Facebook, so it's obviously very valid. Is there any way for like AI to be able to take minutes? Are there any programs out there?
So I turned to the AIES person I know, Jericho Mealy, and the director of human services. He has been trying to do that today. I'm sure he is the genesis of such Facebook information because it's what he does. He tried it a little bit and it does an okay job, and we're working on it a little bit. But we're also looking into you can obviously produce transcripts of meetings off of YouTube, some combination of using that. And some summaries. It doesn't always capture that. We're looking into whether or not if the minutes can kind of really just get to the gist of what happened and have the transcript available or posted with. If that will work as well. But we're really trying to cut our time down on minutes a bit until Terry 2.0, if Terry 2.0 ever arrives.
Well,
But this is
thank-
not unique. I'm sure HTC is going through the same problems in planning and finance and everyone that used Terry. And yeah, she's definitely missed.
Yeah, we definitely.
Yeah.
Ian, yep.
Well, just to follow up on the Facebook post and what Jeff is saying, I've got a review here of the 12, best dictation software reviews. There's a ton of stuff out there, but I've never used any of them, so I have no opinion on what might work.
Thank you, Ian. Linda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, don't use a transcript. Having taken minutes since 1983, Mark Beal knows I took the minutes for the ZBA all those years. I've been over it with town council multiple times with multiple boards because I somehow always got stuck with the minutes no matter where I was because, oh, give them to her. She's done them. They don't want transcripts. They want who spoke, very minimally, what the issue was, and that's it. Minutes can be incredibly short because I actually went to a minute takers thing. And so we don't need transcripts. But what we're doing, I think, at the HDC, because we need those minutes because we have to make revisions based on the minutes, is that there are somebody in the office is not trying to take them while we're at the meeting. They're rewatching the meeting so they can speed through stuff. So they're watching the meeting the next day or the 2 days or 3 days later and taking the minutes off of that. So it's not necessary to try to take the minutes verbatim while we're in the meetings, but just keep them incredibly short. Who said what, who spoke, that's it. It doesn't have to be a transcript and you don't have to do anything verbatim in the minutes. They can be 3 pages long and that's it. So don't get too crazed about not being able to keep up because they can be incredibly short. And I don't mind coming into the office to show you guys how short they can be.
Thank you, Linda. I'm sure they're trying all options and want to keep it as short and sweet as possible. And I think minimize the time spent a day or two later in the office doing this. So I'm confident between all the town departments who need to cover this that something really great's gonna happen. Seth,
Hopefully.
Seth, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, hopefully we can get a new town minutes taker very soon. But in the meantime, thank you to the staff for doing it. I wouldn't discount AI though. This is a little bit tangential, so I'll be quick, but there's actually an article before the Massachusetts Congress right now. It's SD 1827 if anyone's interested. It's an article related to regulating AI like ChatGPT, and the article sponsor wrote it using ChatGPT. So if you can write legal text that is submissible before state congresses, we probably can get minutes done.
Thank you. Great information. All right, so we're gonna hold on the minutes. They'll be ready when they're ready and then we'll vote on them. And that brings us to our next item under other business. We have SE 482824, geotube removal enforcement order, discussion of extension request. So I know the commission received some feedback, from Greg Berman over the past week as he weighed in on our 3 removal options. We've also received some correspondence from different property owners that I believe has been emailed out to everybody. So we have those items to discuss this evening. I'm wondering if any commissioners have any questions kind of before we get going with the material in front of us. Ian and then Seth.
My question would be for Jeff through you, whether or not we've had any legal advice about the ramifications of granting an extension.
So we've looked into that, granting an extension, and where we go from here is 100% at the commission's discretion. The enforcement order isn't in jeopardy if you guys set deadlines for action to be taken as required by the commission to essentially make that enforcement action whole. So if you guys, require a removal protocol based upon one of the options today at a specific date and you move that and the removal moves, as you're not jeopardizing that removal order at this point.
Thank you.
Seth, I had seen your hand up, and then Linda, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to mention too that there has been some attempts to set meetings with the select board to discuss sconset, resiliency and stabilization generally. And without derailing this process, I mean, I think we should go through and listen to the items being presented today. But I would like to go through with that process of having those conversations with the select board. I know that the dates proposed are more than a month away at this point, or a little bit more than a month away. So I think that if other commissioners would like to also have those meetings, I know that members from the town and SPPF have for many times asked for extension of the removal order to allow for those meetings. And I would be, in favor of allowing a further extension to allow for those meetings. That has nothing to do with my opinion on the removal order. I remain a staunch supporter of the removal order. I don't think anyone will question that, but I think we should do our best to engage in collaborative discussions with the select board and postpone any effective dates on the removal order until after those conversations have concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Linda?
I agree with everything Seth just said, and I'm against removing them anyway, but that's not unknown to everybody. I do remember one of the options, cautionary, that they not be removed until the summer or the fall anyway. So I think we really need to give them an extension that makes sense, probably for the next 90 days, because you don't know when we're going to meet with the selectmen and what's going to happen after that. So that would be my option here. Without getting into the weeds on it today, I think we really need to deal with the issue in front of us because we only extended it to like today or the 23rd. And so that's where I am at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Mike, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also support with what Seth is recommending, meeting with the select board. Being one of the newer commissioners, I have not had the number of years you all have had going through this, for better or for worse. I also want to let the Sconset residents who sent their letters in know that the commission has received them, as you mentioned, and we're taking that all into consideration. And I'm also at the moment not in favor of removing the geotubes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think tonight, and I agree, we need to meet with the select board. But I also think we need to give SBPF some tasks as far as organizing moving forward so that they have some benchmarks for actual removal and some plans in place. In reading the correspondence from some of these Sconset residents, I understand that they are worried about their properties being threatened, but I'm also concerned with some of the factual inaccuracies that keep being kind of spread about when it comes to this project. The commission would not be here had the applicant maintained their project in good standing and followed the rules set forth under the Wetlands Protection Act and our local bylaw, which would have included amending their order properly had they wanted to change sand mitigation amounts. So we are here because the applicant, failed to do those things. I do want to make sure we talk about Greg Berman's read on the three options so that, again, we have information for SBPF to be working on moving forward so that again, those options become more robust, should we choose one. I also want to make sure that we have gotten I believe it's the 2022 sand report in, whichever report was supposed to come in January. I think that's very important for the commission in making our decision moving forward, and for our meeting with the select board to understand the current standing of that project. And I know that sand report was promised to come into us at some point in January by Dwight Dunk back in the fall. And as I'm aware, nothing has been submitted to date. And I do find that concerning. And again, to have any productive conversation about the status out there, we would need that promised report. Linda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that, but I think we got to move past that now. Because we won in court. I think all that's been established. I don't see the point in rehashing it again. I see the point in moving forward from where we are right now, and we got to deal with where we are at the moment, rather than going back to what they did and didn't do. I think we need to keep going forward here and figure out where we're going to go next. So while I appreciate all of that, I really am not happy about going backwards again.
So thank you, Linda. I'm not going backwards, but literally these inaccuracies were sent to us in emails this week. So I want to make sure to clear up that record as somebody who's been sitting on this for 9 years. You know, from both sides. So if they don't want us to go back in the past, we need to stop hearing statements from that side that make me feel like we need to clean up the record with accurate information. So that's why I made that statement, because again, it continues to spread inaccurate information.
Yes, and at some point, they're going to have to stop that. And that would be advisable for them to stop talking now until we all have a joint meeting and figure out where we're going from here. I don't think it's productive either. I agree with you.
Thank you, Linda. Ian, I see your hand up.
You did, Ashley, and I just want to thank you for articulating what I would have done if you hadn't beat me to it. And I'm sure expressed your unhappiness with the inaccuracies in such a succinct fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions or comments from commissioners right now? Joe?
I agree with your comment in terms of where we are where we are because the orders of conditions were not met. And I read through these 4 emails that I got today. Nowhere in there did I find anybody saying we screwed up. The ones that had me really riled were where someone said unprofessional yet highly emotional members of CONCOM. I've been on the CONCOM commission now for a little more than 6 months. I haven't seen any of that, none of it. I don't know where these people get those kind of statements. The other one that is a little riling also is we doubt that new members read 9 years of data. I'm a new member. I read 889 pages out of 3 NOIs. One dated August of 2015, one dated January of 2018, and one dated November of 2022. I got all done reading that and I let it set for a couple of days and I went back and I read the summaries of those 3. And it struck me that I could run these NOIs through the computer and do some sorting so I could get some objective numbers in terms of what was going on rather than subjective answers. I read it. So that statement is not true. I read all those damn pages. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So again, I just want to confirm with Jeff and Vince that we have not received the like yearly reporting that we were supposed to receive
Correct. It has not been received. I have requested it and sought its updates, and their Q3 report, I think, may be in development. After that, there's some uncertainty.
Okay. Thank you, Vince, because as I read the dates, they sent their pull the plug letter after that report really should have been underway and almost completed for us, was my understanding. Okay, so at this point, I will open it up for members of the public to ask questions or comments. RJ Turcott, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Ersman, RJ again on behalf of the Nantucket Land Council. Those letters and submissions weren't in the packet, and I'm wondering if staff could make them available since you guys are discussing them. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. I think they all came in this week is probably why they were missed, but Jeff, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, we got all of them yesterday, and I will say I even just got one like 30 seconds ago. We'll have all of them up and posted as quick as we can. But like I said, we literally just got one a minute ago, so they will all be available.
Thank you, Jeff. And it appears we have some public comment on YouTube, so I'll read through this. We have Deanne Atherton asking who requested the extension. And I believe that's the extension of the removal order that was requested some time ago now. I'm not aware that we've gotten a new ask for an extension. We have Burton Balkind, who writes, the bottom 2 layers of geotubes above the ground are exposed and the tubes are acting like a wall. I would ask the commission to remove the tubes as fast as possible. Deanne Atherton asks, please explain what meetings. Will these meetings be held in public? Deanne, I think you're referring to the meeting with the select board, and as I am aware, it will be a publicly available meeting whenever we can agree on a date. And then another comment from Burton Balkind, if you choose to extend the removal order, can we get the permit holder to push the sand on the template onto the foot of the geotubes? And I do agree, I am concerned about the current state of the geotubes in essentially leaving them without a project manager. I don't see how we can responsibly do that. So we will need some action from SBPF. And Meredith Moldenhauer, I see your hand up.
Hello, good evening. Meredith Moldenhauer on behalf of SBPF. My cell service may be a little spotty, so please tell me if I'm breaking up at any point in time. I'm here this evening with Jamie Feely as well as Mark Haley, who's on the phone, to potentially answer any questions you may have in connection with the Berman letter that came in as we move forward in the removal process. I want to make sure that you're aware we're all here and able to kind of answer questions based on that most recent letter. We are also working to get the Q3 report. We informed Mr. Murphy and Jeff Carlson that we are working on that. The individual that's responsible is currently on vacation, my understanding is, and that as soon as he is back, that will get filed. We are available to kind of answer any other questions or to, again, discuss the different options that were in our removal process.
Thank you. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In relation to the initial report, the Haley report about removal options, and then the Greg Berman's letter, I said independently last time that I think option 2 is not a feasible option. Greg Berman seems to agree. He seems to think that either option 1 or option 3 would be the feasible option. So I would recommend that at least today we discontinue any discussion of option 2. that gives SPPF a little bit of clarity. And then we ask for more informed, built out plans on exactly how option 1 and option 3 would work. I'm personally inclined to go with option 3, just because I feel like option 1 is too random and variable, leaves a lot up to chance. But I would like to see better defined plans on option 1 and option 3 only. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Joe, I just saw your hand up.
Yes, the issue, somebody made the comment that they should remove the first to the lower levels of the bags. That is really dangerous. I could tell you, as a engineer, I would not be standing on that beach when those two got pulled out. People have to think really carefully about pulling those last two bags out. Otherwise, you'll hear the word avalanche.
Thank you, Joe. I think that is where SBPF, has to do their due diligence in finding contractors to remove this array safely. I still have to fall back on some of the earlier comments made by SBPF and their representatives that they could just take a X-Acto knife essentially across the front of those structures to remove them. It would be that easy. I think those sorts of bold statements, were obviously inappropriate at the time and maybe signified a lack of understanding of the complexities of this project at that time, because we're realizing it's certainly not that easy. Linda, I see your hand up.
I was just going to say almost the same thing you did, and it was really discouraged to try to touch them until the summer. And I don't think running out there this time of year with this kind of surf and the weather, you never know what it's going to do next, because tomorrow I guess it's going to be 40 and rainy and windy as opposed to today, that it was inadvisable to even do anything to them at the moment. So I don't want to be foolish here.
Thank you, Linda. And I don't think anyone, even someone like me, who ultimately I really do stand behind the removal order, I don't want it to be done haphazardly. I don't think it could be done, in a short-term time frame right now without contractors and safety kind of procedures put in place. Ian, I see your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Through you to Jeff. So, as several people have said, currently the tubes are completely out of compliance with no coverage. And so who is actually legally responsible right now for that? Are SBPF still legally responsible, or is it now the town's responsibility? And if it's SBPF's responsibility, can't you, if necessary, under an emergency order, make sure that an independent contractor starts putting sand down there off the top as soon as possible, and then bill SBPF accordingly? Because clearly this is an issue.
Right. So I'll try to take that in pieces, and hopefully I'll get them all. So the permit is still a valid permit, right? It hasn't been revoked. The license is still in effect with the select board. All of those pieces are still there. There is the active removal order that's being worked through, but that order of conditions is still a valid order of conditions. So the permit holders in that situation are still responsible for the permit. So hopefully that answers kind of that first question. As far as getting an independent contractor to do that and then essentially sending the bill to the permit holder, I'm not sure I can answer on how that mechanism would work right here. It's not something we've done before, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess. I have to look into that a little bit. But I can certainly look into it and get back to you guys well in front of the next meeting for what that would be. I'm just not sure of all the legalities involved there. And given the fact that this is a licensed property too, on how that would play into that, I think there's a lot of moving parts to definitively answer if we can just do that work and then bill behind it. I'm not legal counsel enough to answer that question.
So, if I may, Madam Chair. So, thank you, Jeff, because right now, I think we're all in agreement, right, that not only is it out of compliance, but this is a really salient fact that there's no protection of the geotubes, no sacrificial sand whatsoever, and that's something that we need there as quickly as possible.
Yes, Ian, I would agree with that. That without the sand nourishment, this is acting as a hard structure. And it's that sort of situation that makes me feel like we need to get to this removal as quickly as possible. If we're not going to be actively mitigating with sand, then they need to be out.
Right. So this brings us to the extension. Well, I totally accept what Seth is saying. I think maybe we should be very careful to what extent we grant another extension and limit it to as short as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I think we could grant an extension essentially for enough time for them to solidify these plans, to propose like real concrete plans with construction protocols that we can, vote on. I don't think we could tell them, pick option 1 or option 3 tonight, with a removal date. I think we have more we would need to review, and that's what I would ultimately see an extension for. But Seth's been trying to raise his hand, so I want to give him a chance to speak for himself. And then I do see the other hands up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first point is SPPF can say they're backing out of the project. They can write it in an email. They can publish it in a newspaper. They can do whatever they want, but they have an active permit with their name on it. So they're legally mandated to follow through with the conditions of the permit. There is no legal mechanism. I think we even researched this. There's no legal mechanism for them to get taken off an active order, even if they wanted to. So if the permit is not in compliance right now, we could go ahead and issue them another enforcement order mandating that they do sand mitigation. Should we do that, or should we just go to removal at this point? Remains to be seen. But we have full ability through our enforcement powers to issue as many enforcements as we want to lead to as many outcomes as necessary to get permits into compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Meredith Moldenhauer, your hand's been up.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. I just was asking, you had indicated that you would want some more detail about the phase 1 or option 1, option 3. We have, as I said, Mr. Haley on the phone. If you want, he can speak to kind of the detail that was already in our submission to try to make sure we understand what more information you would want.
I think we need like robust details. Like we would start removing bag A, the first 20 feet, that's anticipated to take a week. We would move on. So really staged procedure on how this would be executed so that, we can get to it in a lot of ways. It's difficult to even have proper review of some of these options when they lack some, I guess, protocol or detail.
Mr. Haley, are you able to unmute yourself? I know he's on the phone, so he can't raise his hand.
And again, I'm not necessarily asking for that right now. I think we need like detailed out in writing, clearly described So that could, be a matter of our record, with, again, very clear detail. Linda, I see your hand up, and then Seth, I'll go to you.
Again, back to what Seth said at the very beginning. We have to meet with the selectmen, and I don't think we should order them removed today until after we all get together in one place.
Thank you, Linda. I am in agreement with that, but I do still think we need to parallel track this and make sure we're making progress with the information we need for the removal, and that we're not dragging our heels on that side. Because ultimately, these structures are in the ground. Even if we decide with the select board that they're going to stay in another 5 years, that 5 years is up, we need to know how we're going to remove them, because clearly it's more difficult than individuals anticipated. So I think that is important. Seth, I saw your hand up, and then Mike, I'll go to you.
Thank you. And I agree. And I stand by my comment that we should wait and issue an extension until after we have that meeting with the select board and try to see how we can move together collaboratively for the future of this area. But independently, we also have to get appropriate documentation for the removal process in place. I'm just one person, but personally, at a minimum, for an appropriate removal document, I'd like to see a more specific timeline of activities. I know a general timeline was proposed, but exactly when machinery is going to be there, exactly what how long it's going to take for each step. I would like to see a schematics of how each section is going to be removed. If there's going to be differences in each layer of tube, I would like to see a schematic, a drawing for each layer. I would like to see also at minimum a robust construction safety protocol. I would like to see a disposal protocol for what is going to be done with this material. And I would like to see a document showing who's going to be the points of contact for each of these steps. Who's going to be the point of contact for SPPF, who's going to be it for the town, who's going to be it for the contractor. If a contractor hasn't yet been hired or picked, a list of suitable contractors. These are the things at minimum which I'd like to see from the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Mike, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief because Seth kind of covered my concern with the safety protocols. It seems like it could be, and based also on what Joe said, very dangerous work. So we'd want to see a robust safety protocol as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Meredith, I see your hand up.
Oh, yes. Mr. Haley said he's not admitted to speak. And so I don't know, Jeff, if you need to admit him, as I said earlier on the call, he is on his phone, a 617 number. He said he can't be unmuted.
So I don't think we can unmute from our side. He would have to unmute on his phone. I think he's on the call.
Can you, as the leader, unmute? He's trying to get admitted. He said he cannot speak. He wanted to address some accuracies in the Berman plan in regards to water to make sure we're all on the same page and that we're all understanding the different options clearly. Okay.
Jeff can tell him what to hit on his phone because I've had trouble unmuting and muting also when I've been on my cell phone. There is a methodology to unmuting if Jeff want to put that out there.
Yeah, I'll try to track that down again. Will, maybe I'll do it. I'm actually not a host on this meeting, so I don't have the power.
It's *6 to unmute.
Okay.
Perfect. *6. And while we're waiting for Mr. Haley to figure out his tech, Mark Beal, your hand's been up.
He's muted.
Yes, thank you. I totally concur with the need to meet with the Board of Selectmen. I think that's a very important function for us to fulfill. We've been talking about it for months now. We can't seem to agree on a date. We should really do that. For me, I think it's important that we organize option 1, 2, 3, and I think 1 and 3 are the most important ones to look at, most viable. But it's hard for me to feel sympathetic to the SBPF regarding their wanting to extend or even not remove at all when they are putting on the mitigation sand they're required to put on. That sort of takes away the incentive for me to want to grant them an extension of 1 day, let alone month, 3 months, 6 months. I wish they would be more cooperative. I realize the order, like the order of enforcement, but removal order. But it's sort of, they're shooting themselves in the foot, in my view, by not helping with the mitigation sand. Now they have a hard armoring system, which is affecting up and down beach, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Ian, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Ashley. So I completely concur with what Mark is saying, and I guess through you to either James Feely or to Ms. Moldenhauer, what do you plan to do about the bare geotubes? In other words, at this meeting, I'd like to propose, as Seth suggested, another enforcement order if we don't get a satisfactory answer to when they're going to put more sand in front of the geotubes.
Thank you, Ian. Meredith or Jamie, can you speak to your ability to actually push that nourishment sand down and cover the geotubes?
So let me just start by just saying, the issue of the different options is questions of safety. Option 1, as we've said before, is the safest option. As we have analyzed it and as our consultants analyzed it, unfortunately, Mr. Haley still is not able to unmute. He tried the star 6, but it did not work. Jamie is available to speak in regards to the ability to potentially push some of the sand on from the top of the geotubes down. That would be potentially the first phase of phase 1, or the option 1 anyway, in the course of the removal process. So if the Concom wants to issue that or require us to do that as kind of the first phase, we are happy to then comply and do that and push the sand down to try to clear off the top and start kind of the beginning portion of the removal.
So Meredith, I don't want to interrupt that. We're not choosing a phase tonight. We want to make sure you're in compliance. So this would be pushing the sand over to mitigate the structure so that you're properly in compliance with your permit. This would not be picking an option for removal.
Well, we would see it as the initial phase of removal, just to start clearing that off the top.
Jamie, what's your ability to get to action?
So I can't speak for SBPF in terms of their, interest or willingness to introduce more sand out there. I think the issue with potentially getting on top of the tubes would be, and I haven't been out there in a little bit, so I'm not 100% on this, but I don't think there's ramps on either end at this point. So that would have to be rebuilt. And the question would become, where would that sand come from in order to get the machine up to the top without damaging the geotubes? But there is sand on top of the template. And so if we could, think about a way to get a machine on top of, we could certainly push sand down.
Okay, so I think from my perspective, commissioners, I think we need to maybe make a motion to order the sand pushed off the top of the geotube, as it is your responsibility to maintain those. You would need to make ramps in order to remove the tubes anyway. So I mean, that is my feeling. If you're not kind of willing to say, yep, we can get out there next week, that we might need to order that done because it is concerning.
Obviously, have to work with the weather. Obviously, I don't know, Jamie, if the weather's going to be impact on that, but we could obviously work with that as well.
Yeah, and I haven't been out there in quite a while, so I'm also happy to get out there and to report back to Jeff as far as what do the ends look like and what is the ability to get a machine on top of there right now.
Yeah, I think that would be advisable since we don't really know some of the factors. And if we have that information, we can then report back.
Okay. Yeah, and I think again, Jamie, when was the last time you were out there and someone had boots on the ground from your organization?
So Roland does the inspections from my office. I don't know when the last report that we issued was, but my guess is probably about a month ago.
Okay. All right. Seth, I saw your hand up, and then Ian, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I understand that the site will have to be scoped out, but I still would be in favor of ordering or making that motion to order the tubes covered today. And generally, when we make these orders, we give a 21 or 30-day time period for that. So that would give them appropriate amount of time to go on site, figure out what needs to be done, report back to staff, say this is what we're going to do, and then do it. And I don't think that minimizes any of our process for the removal. I don't think that minimizes any of our process for potentially moving forward with conversations with the select board. It just makes sure that the current situation is maintained in compliance with status quo so that we're not having additional impacts beyond the impacts that have already happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Ian?
Yes, I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay. So Ian's
Or
made.
I'm actually happy to second Seth's motion since he was the one that suggested it initially.
All right.
Can you repeat the motion specifically so I know what the scope of this motion is?
Yes, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Seth.
So I'll move to order that the permit holder cover the geotubes appropriately within 21 days from today's date, and submit any plans or documentation to commission staff documenting how they're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, you're still giving the second?
Yes, I am.
Mike, do you have a question about the motion?
No, I just said, before we get too deep into that, I just was wondering if Vince, Jeff, or Will had any comment on what the ramp situation looks like. If they've had any been able to get out there.
Vince?
I was out there last week, and just from looking down from above, they look washed out.
Thank you, Vince. I'd imagine without them going and doing their winter maintenance is when you need to be pushing sand down regularly and maintaining the ramps, that it is problematic there. Linda, do you have a question about the motion? I just want to make sure we don't lose this one.
I just want to make sure that we're then going to have to give them an extension, that we're not, this isn't precluding the discussion about the extension, correct?
No, I think from what I can tell, we're all in agreement that like we need to issue an extension because we don't even have a concrete plan for removal. So we have nothing to vote on tonight. But I think I see a very big environmental problem a brewing with these things not covered. The impacts to downdrift beaches during the storm season when these things are uncovered is a major issue. And something that we need to rectify. And that's what this motion aims to rectify, to keep the current permit that they have somewhat into compliance. Jeff, I see your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
I'm rusty. Just kind of from my notes, just trying to summarize. I think there's really three questions that we need to address with timeframes from the discussion tonight. And if I may, and not to be so bold, I think looking at the schedule for our meetings and things, I think Seth's idea for 3 weeks to get sand from the top to the front. One, I think it accomplishes two things. It covers the front, and I do agree with Meredith. It's kind of whether they're going out by option 1 or option 3, the top tube is going to have to get uncovered at some point either way. So I don't think there's really anything lost in that process by doing so. I think we luck out that in 21 days is our meeting on March 9th. That's 3 weeks from today. I think that's pretty fair for step one. I think given the dates for the select board meeting looking towards the end of March, I think it may be something to request those protocols for option 1 and option 3 be developed and put to paper for review with the details that Seth kind of enumerated at a minimum for maybe that first meeting in April 6th, and then to keep it separated from the having the concern that Linda brought up before of having the extension for removal set for the same date as the discussion, because I agree that's a little bit problematic, is it may make sense to set that date to the following meeting on April the 27th. It's another 3-week gap. And then you get those 3 measurables with an actual like time frame set to it, but it's not, I know it seems like forever right now, but I know that time will go pretty quickly for everyone too.
Thank you, Jeff, for laying that out so clearly. Joe, I saw your hand up.
I would agree to extend the time frame, not for the planning. If it's 21 days to get the plan or shorter to get the plan, that's fine, but to get the sand all dumped in there may be a real problem doing it in 21 days. You've got school holidays coming up.
No, they should be able. So Joe, sorry to interrupt. That's been a traditional condition for them, that when the geotubes are uncovered, they have 21 days to recover those geotubes. So that's something they should easily be able to execute.
Then does that mean there is no plan? They just dump the sand? And
Yep,
that'll
so
meet
that
the
would-
requirements?
So they're not actually even dumping sand. This is them pushing sand that already
Right.
exists on the top of the template. And that's all detailed in the order of conditions they have for this process. So that wouldn't be adding anything new. It's just asking them to comply with something they are not in compliance with.
I understand that now, but does that mean the planning has more than 21 days? Can
So
they get the sand in there starting in a week from now or 2 weeks from now? Or they do that, it's raining out right now, it's gonna be stormy the next couple days. This is a bad time of the year to be doing that.
But see, this is the time of year they'd always need to be doing that, because the geotubes are traditionally uncovered in the winter, and that's why we give them 21 days. So it allows enough time to get in between storms on a couple of day period to plan. So this is something they've had to deal with for the life of their permit.
Okay,
And I want to make sure we don't lose the first motion to get these covered in 21 days. Seth, I saw your hand up again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With complete respect for your authority, I want to make sure we vote on the motion on the floor. But to give clarity on my motion, I do plan later to introduce 2 separate motions that are very similar to what Jeff had talked about to discuss the other aspects before us. But I just want to make sure we actually vote on this one first.
So at this point, we're going to vote on the motion to get the geotubes covered that Seth made and Ian seconded. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, so that carries unanimously, asking that the permit holder recover those geotubes within 21 days. And that would bring us to a March 9th date. Meredith Moldenhauer, I see your hand up.
Oh, I just wanted to put on the record, I was actually going to ask if you guys could, before you started voting, for 45 days, just that's what, our consultants are saying may be necessary, since we obviously have additional work that have to be done potentially. So if you already made the vote, but I want to make sure that it's on the record that we're asking for 45 days.
So I
I
appreciate
could make
that.
a motion to reopen, Madam Chair, if that's the case.
Well, I'm going to say no to that because they need to be in compliance. This structure, this has been the structure of this permit the entire time. So if the permit holder has gone that far out of compliance that they don't think they can execute this within 21 days, I would like to see documentation as to why. Because again, this has been a clear condition of their permit the entire time they've been holding it. And if we haven't been paying attention to the site as permit holders, that identifies another kind of scary aspect to this project. So that is my feeling there. They've already been uncovered far too long for our resource areas to remain protected, and we cannot continue the adverse impacts. Ian.
Thank you. And I would like to add that specifically that after the massive NSTAR on March the 9th through the 13th, I believe, but I can double check my dates on the southern end of the geotubes and those 3 back-to-back nor'easters, SBPF put down so much sand within the next week that you couldn't even see the NSCAR. So it's not that it's not within SBPF's capability to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I also want to make sure, and I don't know if we need another motion for this, but I think by that March 9th deadline, we need the last report from this entity that was promised to us in January. I think we need those details for even our meeting with the select board to know the current status of this project. And I just don't know how far along you guys were since it had been promised to us in January, and now we're, middle of February. Vince?
Just to clarify, you're talking about the annual report.
Yes. That had promised like the year's worth of nourishment sand being on there. I believe it was early October we talked about it with Dwight Dunk, but I cannot remember that date. Meredith Moldenhauer, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, you're talking about an annual report talking about the makeup sand. Is that what you're asking for? I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you're asking for.
We need your annual report to be turned in. The last annual report meeting we had, no sand had been put on during that sand year, and Dwight Dunk made it seem like you guys had put or were putting on sand for the coming sand year, and that report was due to us in January. And we haven't gotten that documentation, whether the sand was actually put on late fall, early winter, or what the status of that is. But again, it was promised to us for January.
Okay, well, we have, as I said before, we have the Q3 report that's forthcoming. I will check in on the annual report and we will get back with you on that. I just wanted to make sure, I know you guys are about to make a motion on the detailed information that Seth mentioned regarding more, and you also, Chairwoman, person you mentioned about detailed on the different options, including construction safety, removal procedures, timing. I just want to indicate that all options 2 and 3, as I think I said earlier, all require watering. And so if that was a distinction that potentially someone felt was something that the Berman report mentioned, that's not the case. And so if you are not actually making a motion on any of the options, we would like to keep all 3 options open and provide detailing on all 3 by whatever date you deem appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Meredith. I think there will be a motion coming soon. I also want to make sure we've had a few more public comments come in on YouTube from Burton Balkine. Can we ask the permit holders at this meeting to comply with the order of conditions? So we're doing that. From Deanne Atherton, is SBPF subject to fines for willful noncompliance of its permit? Deanne, that is something the commission could discuss. It's obviously something that could be put on the table. Burton Balkind says that he has drone shots from 10 days ago of the
Sakes.
if that would help. So I say any documentation we can add to the record could be helpful. So Burton, if you think that that's valuable, submit that to staff. And then from Sandra Helm, what are the negative aspects of the geotubes not being covered? The geotubes not being covered act as a hard armoring structure. Part of the permit here requires sand mitigation be put on to mimic a naturally eroding bluff that would contribute sediment to the littoral system. That littoral system spreads that sediment up and down the coastline, building beaches. Without that sediment contribution, you end up starving the littoral system of sand and ultimately causing impacts to downdrift beaches, which can include accelerated erosion, narrowing of beaches, etc. There are very, very well documented scientific negative outcomes to resource areas from hard armored structures. So that's kind of a quick shot at it. This point, I've done a lot of talking. To commissioners, I know Seth said you had some motions to make. I know Ms. Moldenhauer suggested that we keep all three options on the table. If SBPF feels that they can provide, the robust planning for all three, I don't see why that is a bad idea at this point. But do any commissioners have comments, questions, motions? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Moldenhauer, if you'd like to submit information for all three, I don't have a problem. I was just trying to make it easier for SPPF and Mr. Haley, less work in my opinion, but if you're willing to provide the robust information that we're asking for all three options, that's great. And I'd make a motion that the permit holder submit a document fleshing out the more concrete and robust protocols for each of the options by March 9th for our review.
Okay. Linda, I see your hand up. Do you have a question before we talk about the motion?
Yeah, I think I'll second it for discussion, but I think March 9th is too soon for that kind of a detailed response of the three options. I think they need longer. And I know they were, Meredith was talking about 45 days for the sand mitigation, but I think the March 9th is ridiculous because if you've got kids or anything else, you've got school vacation starting, and Ashley has school vacation starting next week. And you've got all this other stuff going on. I think March 9th is too soon to ask for a full flesh out on all three options. I defer through you, Madam Chair, to Meredith.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Seth, and I think Jeff maybe did drop a April 6th date, which might be better. Go ahead, Seth.
Sorry, just quickly, the intent of the motion was so that we'd possibly have some information before a meeting with the select board, but I do agree that it's probably a difficult challenge to get all that in within, let's say, 3 weeks. So I am certainly open to an amendment on the motion to have a later date. Thank you.
I'll amend my motion. If what was the date that Jeff said, Madam Chair? Was it, you said April 6th?
April 6th is our first meeting in April. Yes.
Okay, I'll make that. If Seth will amend his motion to make it April 6th, I'll amend my second to April 6th.
I will amend the motion.
Okay. So motion made by Seth, seconded by
Wait a minute.
Linda.
Yeah, I'm confused now. Would you please make the full motion? Thank you.
Seth, I don't know if you want to repeat it yourself, but essentially we're asking SPPF to have all of the protocol details that Seth kind of talked about earlier with safety protocols, timeframes, etc., for all three options submitted for our April 6th meeting.
That is the motion, Madam Chair.
And Linda seconded. So if there aren't any other questions, we're going to go roll vote. Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding. Oh, you're muted.
A reluctant aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Okay. So we've got that. And then we still have to extend the actual removal date. Jeff had suggested, and I think this is a good idea, to have the removal date for our April 27th meeting. That would allow us to discuss the aspects of the three plans on April 6th and give us some time, to actually execute or talk about removal.
Also
Make
moved.
that- I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, so motion made by Mark, seconded by Linda, by roll vote. Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Seth.
I'll also make the motion you suggested to require submission of the 2022 annual report by April 6th.
Thank you, Seth. Would somebody like to second that motion?
I'll second
Ian-
it.
I think Ian got you with the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. So at this point, are there any questions about kind of the process or timelines moving forward?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Seth.
This may be a little bit tangential and we can potentially talk about it offline. But I know some proposed dates for meeting with the select board were in late March. But I think it would actually be better at this point to do it in mid-April, between the April 6th meeting and the April 27th meeting, so that we have more information related on SPPS actual plans that might help inform that process. That's a personal thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Although I'm for that, I think we need to, at this point, schedule the first meeting we can get together possible, because this has been so difficult. And if we need to schedule a follow-up meeting with more information, do it that way. I'm concerned that we've had difficulty scheduling this. I'm also concerned, or not concerned, but I don't think we'll get a full commission. I don't think we'll have a full board of selectmen. I don't know that it's realistic to have, I guess it would be 12 of us all free on the same night. So we might just need to accept that we pick the night with the highest attendance available because of the difficulty scheduling here. But I know Jeff would probably have more insight onto what's been happening in the scheduling background and that planning. I just know it's been tough. So hopefully we can flush that out. Mike, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the 21 days to cover the tubes. So for the end scour that has to build up the ramps, does that sand actually get dumped over to build up the ramps, or how does that work? I guess it's maybe a question for Jamie or Meredith.
Yeah, probably a better question for Jamie, since he's been the one maintaining it all these years.
So historically, what we've done in an event where the southern ramp has been washed out essentially from a storm is we would dump additional sand at that delivery point until there was a sufficient amount there to rebuild the southern ramp from what we've delivered. So that's why, I mean, logistically, that's how we've done it in the past.
Thank you, Jamie. Linda, I see your hand up.
No,
Oh, it's an old one.
I don't remember now.
Well, we
It's been
can
a
go-
long day.
We can go back to you. Vince?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can speak to some of the planning and preparation around the joint meeting with the select board if you wish.
Sure, go ahead.
So I've been working on this for the last several weeks, trying to find dates that might work, not just potentially for excuse me, I'm so used to saying it, for the select board, but as well as the Concom, where it's an off meeting night potentially for both of those boards, and also to make sure that it works for the Arcadis staff. We're looking at March 21st as proposed, with a secondary date of March 28th. And there is scope for 2 public meetings in this. And to prepare for it, each select board member and conservation commission member would hopefully be available within the timeframe in the run up to this meeting. If there's several weeks, all the better, to have a 30-minute interview with Arcadis staff, just to get some feedback and opinion that would not be discussed about what one commissioner said or select board member said to another about anything else. It would be somewhat confidential so that it could be given at the joint meeting. Then the way that it would work is to have at least 1 meeting, if not 2, if it was needed. If it was in March, all the better. But if the commission wishes to suggest dates later, that I would try and then get agreement from Arcadis staff who would be facilitating the meeting, as well as seeing dates that might work for the select board. It is a large moving target, and I tried to add it up, as well as the 12 people from the commission and the board, the staff and Arcadis consultants that would have to be involved, as well as any potential public. We're in excess of 20 people, so it is getting substantial quite quickly.
Thank you, Vince. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I hear that, I get it. Let's schedule at least the first meeting that we can, whether it's in March or anytime else. And then a secondary meeting potentially could be in April, but I agree we should get something scheduled as soon as possible.
I've been harassing Jeff quite frequently about getting these on the date, so I know it's been a tough one, and he's shaking his head yes. I think he's tired of hearing from me. So hopefully we'll get those nailed down. Any other kind of questions about procedure moving forward? And if not, we'll continue this discussion essentially until March 9th, I'm assuming, to check in on the sand covering and any other progress that's come through. Jamie, did I just see your hand up?
You did, and I think I'm probably going to meet Jeff out there either tomorrow or Monday, it sounds like. But does he have some flexibility or the ability to help direct us in some of the logistical decisions that will need to be made? So I doubt very much that there's a ramp at Hoyks and down at the geotubes, and so I think that's going to be the primary logistical question. I'm just wondering how that will get worked through, but over the course of the next 3 weeks.
That's a good question for Jeff. I was under the impression that you guys, as the permit holder, had to maintain those things. Am I incorrect there, Jeff?
So the ramps, oh, sorry, I just froze up there for a second. The ramps definitely are something that they have maintained. Especially the ramp at Quicks Hollow, there's no requirement for them to like permanently maintain that ramp. They did because they were accessing the site regularly. In the past, we've usually met out there and then gone over kind of what the expectation for the footprint is. And then obviously the material is pretty well set. We kind of understand what that's going to be. And then kind of follow their standard operating procedure for getting those ramps back in to get on top. But we've never had an issue working that out or solving that before. So I feel pretty confident that we can at least get a ramp to get on the beach and then on the geotubes and back off the beach.
Thank you, Jeff. Jamie, does that kind of answer your question?
I think in part, I'm not the permit holder. I'm the construction manager, so I just, in regards to sand, I guess we'll work through it, and if Jeff will be a conduit with you relative to anything that may or may not come up logistically, so.
Come on, Jamie, you could do it in your sleep at this point. Said respectfully.
Thank you. But in reality, we used to have sand that was set aside and it was an ongoing process, and those circumstances have now changed. And so I just am wondering about, how exactly we're going to fill some of the gaps that have now developed over the last month or two. But Jeff and I have always worked well together, and let's see what we come up with.
So I think the easy way is if it looks like it's going to be something, and this is my proposal, vastly different than how it's operated in the past for some reason. I mean, that's something that we can always get that information back to you guys. And if we need to, even post something to have a brief discussion to go over that, I think we can do that. Hopefully we won't have to deviate from the original process to such a degree where that would have to happen. But I think that Jamie and I can take a look and set a plan. And then if it looks like that plan is really a deviation from what the existing order is for whatever reason, we can always come back with kind of our thoughts on how to accomplish the goal. And then if we have to post something in between, we do. If not, we can just get it done. So I think looking at the site first will be the kind of the first critical component there.
Thank you, Jeff. So then at this point, I think we're ready to say this will continue until March 9th to kind of check in on progress and the status of those tubes. And anything that kind of comes up in that process, Jeff can pass along to the commission. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this one. And that moves us on in our meeting to enforcement actions, potential enforcement actions. Will, do we have anything?
Hello, Ashley. We have nothing new for this evening.
And still working to maybe tentatively schedule an enforcement meeting in the future.
Indeed.
Perfect. So that moves us on to reports. We have crack.
So I was traveling on Tuesday, and so I didn't participate. And I don't know if Vince wants to say a word or two. Vince, over to you, sir.
If that's permissible, Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Vince.
The committee had another nice meeting on Tuesday, just gone. We've had another update that I drew up on the 40 projects that are on the CRP. There was some questions about where some of them stood, and I gave more clarity on that. We had a special presentation. Sounded like there was a question going.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback.
Oh, I think Linda might need to mute.
Linda, can you mute?
Beg your pardon.
It wasn't me. I'm just sitting here doing nothing.
I'll proceed. We had a special guest speaker from Acclimate who gave an overview of a coastal resilience walk that organization is developing. It looks really impressive. And then the committee was working on one or two other things as well that I'm struggling to remember at this point. It's been a week. All in all, a nice committee meeting. If I just can't remember it.
Thank you, Vince. I agree. It's been a week on my end too. So, all right, that moves us on to CPC. Mark, are you CPC?
I'm sorry, I made my report, but I was muted.
Oh, I couldn't see your lips moving, so I didn't realize you were talking. Go again.
I have nothing to report. No meeting.
All right, perfect. All right, NP and EDC.
Our meetings are normally Monday, but because of weird scheduling, we had to change it. So our meeting is next Thursday, but nothing to report yet.
Okay, perfect. So that moves us on to commissioners'
I'm
comment.
I'm on the Harbor Update Committee.
Okay, and that's not on our list yet. We'll have to get that on our
Yeah.
on our
Because
list.
we met once and we're not meeting again until I think March 7th. We're just sort of figuring out how we're going to attack this.
Okay, so you've met once as a committee and you're planning to meet again soon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm also on that committee through the MP and EDC. Unfortunately, my email was left off all communication, so I didn't know of anything that was happening until after it had already happened, but it has since been ameliorated and I have been brought back up to speed.
All right, well, I'm glad that that's fixed. And we'll have you guys properly listed on reports next time. I completely forgot about the new one. So that moves us on to commissioners' comments. Any commissioners' comments? Joe? Oh, you're muted.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and that's be muted.
Exactly.
My comment regards the editorial page in the paper last week on clear cutting of Surfside Crossing. And Concom was dragged into this thing based on what's written in this newspaper article. We're not involved in that, are we? That has nothing to do with Concom, as far as I know. I don't think there's a water problem there.
No, there's not a water, there's no wetlands resource areas there, but we are included on Mass Natural Heritage permitting. So any permit around Nantucket that Natural Heritage, issues does go through the office. It just doesn't come in front of us because they don't always have wetland issues. We only see those permits when there's a wetland issue. So that's where we got dragged in. It's not something we typically look at, but we did discuss kind of in reference to our regulations update. It is under the purview of the Concom to be looking at open space. And it's possible that we could weigh in on these issues more in the future, even though we historically have not on Nantucket.
Well, this goes further on to say that in speaking to board members and commissioners of these various boards, it has become apparent that a permit was not brought to their attention. Nobody talked to me. I don't know if anybody talked. I don't know if this woman, Megan Perry, I don't know if she's talked to anybody else, but she claims she has talked to the commissioners.
I know I have spoken to Megan. I know she also spoke to the Natural Resource Office, who said that that was not forwarded to commissioners. So she's heard from, again, the office that we did not get that information. I'm not sure if others have spoken to her. Mike, I see your hand up, and then Seth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity to perhaps to Joe, she did speak at the public comment portion of our last meeting where she brought up that she wanted Concom to have access to the permit. So that may have been what she was referring to when she spoke.
Okay.
Seth, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know I've said this many times, but what she's referencing is actually related to the original reason why conservation commissions were developed in the state of Massachusetts in the first place. So I would recommend everyone do some homework and read the Massachusetts Conservation Commission Act. It predates the Wetlands Protection Act by like 15 or 20 years and is much more broad, related to open space protection rather than just wetland resource areas. When the WPA was enacted, the state realized, oh, we already have this commission that's already doing this relatively similar thing. Let's transfer authority to them to handle wetland resource areas rather than creating a whole new regulatory scheme. And also maybe we can spend some time at a meeting reviewing some other municipalities' agendas, because contrary to Nantucket, lots of other municipalities handle open space management on a consistent basis. I will certainly agree that Nantucket does not do that and has historically not done that. So I don't think it's rare. I don't think anything's odd about the fact that this open space management permit wasn't forwarded to us, because that's not been a historical precedent. But we have full ability and authority to review those things if we should so desire. And if I may sneak in my second comment, I would request that staff, since this keeps coming up again and again, I would request that we actually put on one of our upcoming agendas for March or early April, the discussion of our land holdings and a discussion of how we want to, what we want to do in terms of open space management in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Ian, I'd seen your hand up.
Well, you did actually, and sort of Seth has managed to embarrass me, because Megan reached out to me and I said I didn't think it was within our purview, and clearly I was mistaken. So Seth, I shall absolutely make a beeline for the Conservation Act. So
Yeah, and also I would highly recommend everybody do some of the MACC trainings. If you can only do one, you can do the 101, which is a complete overview of conservation commissions. The Wetlands Protection Act is just one of, I think, 5 pieces of legislation that gives us authority. So it's pretty extensive, dating back to, I think, the 50s or early 60s. And if you haven't looked into it, everyone should, because although we are overwhelmed on Nantucket by wetlands applications, the most in the state of any municipality by far. And I know we all don't want to add more time and hours to our meetings. If there's a reason to, we have full authority to have jurisdiction over these types of things. Thank you.
I just finished the Massachusetts CC program in January, and it is very extensive. There's a lot of information there.
Congrats from a fellow, someone who's also graduated.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have 2 such knowledgeable commissioners serving with us. So thank you, guys. Any other commissioners' comments?
Just a question, Madam Chair. I know Maureen mentioned at one point that she was taking some online class. Is that the class that Maureen was taking? Or was she doing something else?
I think she had been taking some MACC classes. But
I'd love to know what these classes are, because I'll sign up for them.
They're starting, I believe it's the next 2 weeks. They're having like sessions taking place. So Will, maybe you can email that information out. I think you maybe already did. I saw it somewhere, but it could be their listserv that I'm seeing it from.
Yeah, I get their listserv email, so I think it was there. But if staff could please email that information out to all commissioners, that'd be great. They are about to have their annual conference. And as part of that conference, they're doing a fundamentals blitz where you can, I think, take all of the required classes for your certification within the 2-week time. So if you have a free schedule, you can kind of just do it all at once. Also, it's always been the precedent that the town will pay for these classes. So if you do want to take the classes, contact the staff and they'll sign you up directly, which is a huge benefit for us as commissioners. I know life is busy and things get in the way, but I honestly can't recommend the classes. There's nothing else I'm losing my words here, but I can't recommend them any higher than I already have. They are absolutely excellent classes. even for somebody who's worked in this field professionally for a long time, there's stuff related to wildlife management that, I still found an enriching educational experience.
It's great because I'd love to do that stuff.
Well, perfect. Check your emails. Will has his hand up, so I know he has a comment, but hopefully he'll forward that along.
And if they continue to have their annual meeting in Worcester, Worcester has an absolutely world-class art museum.
Perfect.
The largest Roman mosaic in the country as you walk into the museum.
I'd like to second Ian's comments as a native.
Text
I'd
me
like to
later.
second that. I'd like to second that because they have made their museums up there handicap accessible without wrecking the historic aspects of the building. So that was one of the ones that we were doing on the handicap commission because they've just got some great access up there in Worcester. But a great meeting, Madam Chair, as usual.
Thank you, Linda. Seth, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'll be in Worcester in March, so text me the info of those museums. But just quickly, Will, can you either make a just ongoing note when you write up agendas to see if there's a time for this open space discussion, or can we potentially consider dates right now to figure out when the open space discussion would happen?
I have a note right here.
Yeah, and I'm happy as chair to check in with them about the agendas coming up. Maybe March 9th, I think, is looking a little heavy, but the meeting after that, we have two different enforcement issues on March 9th, so that's not a great one. But I think the next meeting should be lighter.
23rd, yeah.
And Madam Chair, if you would like me to present anything, since I've done a good amount of research in this area, I'm happy to.
Yeah, that would be great because it sounds like you have done a large amount of the research on trying to track these properties down. So that would be great. And we'll make sure to keep that on there. Any other commissioners' comments before I give it over to Will for administrator reports? All right, Will, over to you.
I don't have much to add, but I did just forward along the most recent email from MSMCP. And if you scroll down to other events, the MACC annual conference is linked. And my one more thing that I already just forgot, even though it just entered my head. Oh, right. As far as the properties that we hold through the Concom, I've tried to do a little bit of sleuthing. And the only ones that I believe Seth said there were 6. I'm reaching for a number now in my head, but we're only able to find 3 through the assessor's office. So I'm still trying to do some alternative sleuthing. They could be listed under just town of Nantucket, or they could be jointly owned or something. But there's 3 that are kind of mysterious.
Another Nantucket mystery.
Yeah, it's also possible that they're in the ocean somewhere.
And one of the 3 mostly is.
Yeah, because if the consultant Weston and Sampson had pulled just the records from the state without looking at GIS maps, they could have had old records on there, because I know Nantucket property maps stay active for I think 99 years, even if the property is underwater. So we have the most amount of property filings I think anywhere in the state, or it could just be a mistake. But even with that being said, we have at least 3 properties and I think at least 12 acres, and that's not insignificant, and we need to have a discussion about what to do with those.
Actually, I wonder if we've all looked into conservation restrictions possibly that we hold versus actual real estate.
I think that could all come up in this discussion, and we'll try and have the most robust information available for that meeting. I know. Yeah.
Excuse me, go ahead.
I know there's been at least one in my time on the commission that we transferred. It was pretty early on, so it's definitely something that the commission has dealt with before. I was just a newbie enough that I don't really remember the process we went through. So I think we should see if we can track down those other three, hopefully schedule the meeting for that later March date. And get an opinion from Jeff just about historically, like the reminder of what we've done in the past. So that's a great point. All right, so Will, if you don't have anything else to report, we're at the end of our meeting. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Joe, seconded by Ian. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
Zarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Long weekend.